Hey, I'm Angie.
I'm Rhonda, and we are Adventures in Nomadness. Want to know what we learned after 10 days of camper vanning in Scotland?
We're going to share that with you. Hey, thanks so much for joining us today. If you like this video, please give us a thumbs up and hit that subscribe button if you find any of this information helpful. So we camper vanned in Scotland for 10 nights and we learned a lot during this trip, and we are hoping to share some of that with you. So if you decide to camper van another country, maybe some of the pros and cons and the different things that we learned will help you.
Might even help you if you're going to camper van in the US.
Yeah, it might actually. So number one, how did we even pick this camper van? What was my method of madness on it? You know, there's so many van rentals, RV rentals, camper van rentals in the UK. It was really hard to pick. I basically went to the West Highland Way site, which is what we're going to be doing in a couple of days, and they had a whole list. I picked one that we could pick up and drop off in Glasgow. I picked one that had a really, really small size. And I picked one that included insurance and unlimited mileage and had a whole bunch of options that a lot of other places did not, including a Porta Potty, and we'll talk about that in a second. So you'll have to look at, when choosing a camper van rental that's right for you, a lot of different parameters. Pick up and drop off spot, what kind of insurance is included or not included, and on, what kind of options, the size.
How much do you want to spend?
How much do you want to spend? This is one of the cheaper options, good one.
Gas mileage important to you or not?
Yeah, we have the smallest VW camper van that they make, and the gas mileage was really awesome on this. The pros on that were that we could literally park this anywhere in a regular parking spot.
It's car size.
Yeah, it's definitely car size.
Small car size.
The cons of that is we obviously were very limited in size. If we were to pick the same camper van again, I'm not really sure if I'd go with the same size, or if I might go with one just one size longer, but maybe the same width. The roads in Scotland are extremely narrow, so having this size van was really optimal for us.
So here's my thoughts on it. See this back here? This is where the top comes down to. So when the top's not up, you can see that my head cannot be up. And when the top is up, I have to be careful when I sit back that I don't hit myself here. And I guarantee you, after 10 days, I still haven't learned this lesson. I hit my head about 3 or 4 times on average every day.
Yeah. So very, very cramped. But again, the pro was that we could fit into literally any size parking space. So if you're going to rent a camper van, you know, check out all those things. And one of my biggest recommendations is to pay with a credit card that will cover other insurance, like extra insurance. So call your credit card that you're going to use and find out what kind of insurance they offer for an overseas car rental, because that can be really important, make all the difference in the world. One example is this couple we met. I think we talked about them earlier. They high-centered into a ditch and had to be pulled out. They were lucky they had insurance, extra insurance that they had paid for, and you never know what's going to happen. A couple other girls had 2 flat tires. I'm not sure if that was rental or not.
We think that they hit big potholes, and depending on where you're going, you may actually hit those, and if you don't see them in time, I mean, we're talking like that kind of pothole.
After all this rain we had.
Yeah.
So second thing we've learned during this trip of camper vanning, campsite's called a pitch, so you have to have the terminology correct.
Travel with pool noodles. No, not really.
No.
But you can see my pool noodle video, or our pool noodle video that we made recently. I wish I had some here.
Yeah,
but
we can have some
we
here.
We don't travel with pool noodles.
Okay, that really wasn't on our list, but it was funny.
Check some of the things, the supplies that they give you. They said they gave us 2 bath towels. We
paid for 2 bath towels, actually.
We got 1 real bath towel and one I will call
It was a hand towel.
It was a large hand towel.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
So we didn't really get what we paid for on that.
No.
So this company, we went with Rockin' Vans, and we've had good luck with this van. We've had no problems with it, but I would say for it being 2 years old and a lot of use, it's a little beat up. The cushions are stained on the pad here, and then the front seats. It rains so much. I don't know how you don't have that happen, but at the same time it's like, oh, this is definitely beat up. So if you want something a little nicer or better, you might want to ask the van company that you do rent from, how old are the vans, how well are they maintained. No problems mechanical wise with this whatsoever. It was just more cosmetic. I think there's some damage up here. I don't know if it's mold or water damage or whatever, or both, but there is some kind of beat up things there. So definitely when we also did our walkthrough, I think we knew more than the guy that did the walkthrough, and you could tell he was really in a hurry. In Glasgow, this particular company did not have an office, so you're meeting them on a street, which is a little weird. But when I've thought about it too, a lot of van companies will advertise that you can really pick up and drop off at almost every big city across the entire UK. So there's a lot of cities, and so they can't have an office in every single location. So I don't know if it's standard or not to have, and they were probably coming from Edinburgh, I'm guessing, in order to do that with us, but they seemed in a hurry and didn't really cover everything that was here. We had to ask a lot of questions, but fortunately, since we live in an RV, I think we were able to ask the right questions. But then again, we're still discovering things that we're like, oh, he didn't tell us about that. I mean, are those chocks down there, or balance or levelers type of things. And so really on your walkthrough, really ask every question that you can. Make sure you have everything covered that you can, and make sure you know how to reach them if there is an emergency.
So what else? This type of van has an outside cover that goes across the windshield and around the side front seat windows. In theory, to either give you blackout or privacy. And just for those of you traveling alone, be aware that those do black out light, but they really don't give you privacy once it's nightfall and you turn on lights. And here you pretty much can see through. So for us, what we ended up doing, you have two choices. You can either turn the lights out when you're changing clothes, or put some other kind of barrier up. Or and if blackout isn't important to you, I would say don't even bother.
Right, we end up using that one towel that we had
hang it up,
draped across.
I mean, it's not super see-through, but if you walk by the front and look in, you can literally see in.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. What else?
Wild camping. So I think in some of our daily videos that we've done, we've always showed campsites. That was not our initial. Initially, that's not what we were going to do. We had intended on doing wild camping, and I had done some research ahead of time because we were traveling in August, which is the busiest time, and that was due to a work commitment when we got back. It wasn't our first choice to travel in August. August is the busiest time in Scotland for all tourism, and another real good tip is to join a Facebook group. I joined a couple of them. One was the Scottish Motorhomers group, and the other one was the Camping and Caravan site, which I actually joined. And they're full of information. So I actually went to their Facebook page and asked the question. I really would have liked to have winged it during this trip a little bit more instead of having campground reservations, because you just really don't know how much you're going to see during the day and what pace you want and where you're going to end up at the end of the day. So it was a little bit more of a hurried approach having campground reservations. The reasons we did is because when I asked on the Facebook site, hey, is it possible in August to wing it from campsite to campsite, or do you really need to make reservations like you do, say, in Washington State? Or if you don't make a reservation ahead of a time, you're screwed. And they unanimously said, yeah, you need to have reservations in Scotland in August. The campgrounds are totally full. And so that's what we did. There was a couple spots where we didn't have reservations, but we had picked some campsites along the way that didn't take reservations. It was first come, first served, so that we had a little bit of flexibility. But that's why we've learned another reason why we didn't wild camp is because it seemed like a really big gray area when I tried to find information online about it. we've learned quite a bit about wild camping since then.
Boondocking / wild camping are basically the same thing. It's just called something different here. And I don't know that I think they to some degree frown on it. I'm going to guess it's because for the same reason that people in the US frown on it. It's because people abuse it, leave garbage, and I don't know, camp in people's private driveways and things like that. So please don't do that if you are going to be coming over and doing wild camping. And don't do it in the passing zones, and it will actually say passing area. There's plenty of areas marked as parking, viewing sites, whatever, and I think those are okay unless there's a big sign that says no overnight parking.
Yeah, I actually talked to the reception lady at the Sky Camping Caravan Club site, which was such a really great site. And she said they really want people to come to Sky, and they've had a big problem with just that, people dumping garbage. But she said, yeah, it's okay to park in those, parking pull-out spots. The parking, and there's some really good ones. I think we've got a video of it somewhere. But that was okay. They just don't want to advertise that's okay because people were abusing that. Some of the other spots that we saw that people were wild camping were marina areas, and a lot of land is privately owned, so obviously you don't want to park on someone's land.
Another thing that we've learned is, well, we actually knew this going in and didn't plan for it, which is the pads for sleeping in any RV, typically anyway, is not very good. They're usually just styrofoam that squishes down. And of course, this, as we mentioned, this van is somewhat older, so I think it's even worse. But essentially, the first night when we camped on it is like sleeping on basically a hard platform, like no foam at all. That's how it felt. So we were both super sore the next day, and immediately we went out shopping for air mattresses, which basically your camping mattress. So we went to an outdoor store and got 2 that perfectly fit in here, and have been perfectly happy with it. We could have easily brought something from home, but didn't heed that warning based on another YouTube that we had already watched. So it's not something that we don't already know. We were reminded, we still forgot it, and so we end up paying for it. $100 later or more, we were sleeping comfortably in here. Yeah, so it was definitely an extra added expense. We did watch a video on it. She said she was renting this as a single person, and was able to just leave the bed like it was too, so had a mat that she had brought. Which leads me to another point, and that was something we learned that's kind of a con with this size. We had wanted to wild camp, but because of the size of this, it made it hard to. The reason is because that little thing called the Porta Potty. Now, in this other video we watched with the single woman, she had rented the Porta Potty with this, and you can see the size of this. It's not very big, and the Porta Potty would basically go right here at the very front, and which is just fine if you leave the bed up as it is right now with just one person. But there's no way in hell you would be able to lay this bed down flat like we've had to with the 2 of us every night and have a Porta Potty right down here and be able to use it inside at night right next to my head. Who wants to pee right there? No? It could be done. Oh my god, it would be massive yoga aerobics if the bed was down. The bed comes to here. Yeah. You could lift up the seats, and if you can balance on it, I think you can. I think you probably could, but your knees are going to be in the back of the seat. It can be done. Forget it. Thank God we didn't have to. Yeah, that was another thing I meant to say, actually.
we thought we needed I thought I needed the Porta Potty, so I rented that for the week and never used it. Matter of fact, dumped the chemicals out of it at one of the campgrounds.
Because it was leaking.
Yeah, because it was leaking, and discovered I didn't really need it because we stayed at campgrounds that had bathrooms, and even during the day when we're out touring and stuff, there's enough attractions and places. You know, you go in for your coffee or lunch in the afternoon, and this attraction and that attraction, there's plenty of places to go to the bathroom. So
just plan ahead.
Yeah,
places that are out where you're doing, if you're going to do hikes, stop before, obviously.
Yeah.
So just plan that, because those are the one places we didn't have restrooms.
So that was a little bit of wasted money. Didn't need it. Didn't use it.
So it's really hard to keep things dry in here too, because of the shape of this particular van. So I think if I had to do it over again, I would be looking for more of a square van, just for that reason, just to have a little bit more dryness. It rains here a lot. I grew up in Washington State. It rains there a lot too. I'm used to the rain. But when you're camping, you want to be a little dry, especially after 10 days of camping. It does get old where you're constantly fighting moisture in this particular van. And I mean, any small camping is going to have that. But in this one, it becomes even more of an issue because of that slope.
And because of the size too, because it's so small, we don't have a dedicated spot for raincoats, and our wet raincoats are making everything else wet, and our wet boots are making everything else wet, so it's a battle to keep anything dry.
This slope basically helps contribute to the fact that this is right here. Ideally, if this was just a little bit taller, we wouldn't have this problem. We would have more headroom.
So would we rent a camper van again in the UK? And yes, I totally would, but I would definitely go up with probably the next size larger, which was like Rhonda said, the more boxy van. Width-wise, I wouldn't want to go any wider because these roads are so incredibly narrow, and it's a freaky out thing every time a big truck passes you, or and good thing Rhonda was on the other side telling me when I was drifting too far over to the left, because it's really hard to drive on the left-hand side of the roads for the first time. And this small of a van gave us a lot of flexibility with where we went. Some of the towns are extremely small, very tight. Parking is a major issue we found in a lot of places that we went. And so even with this, sometimes there was not enough parking in that particular attraction or spot, and so we'd have to find street parking somewhere. Guaranteed you will not find street parking with a larger RV. Like one larger van, yeah, you definitely could. A little harder to park in a regular spot. But
what do you think of our GPS system?
I think it sucks. You get really used to Google Maps and the fact that you can pick your route and change your route. They give you route options, but the sat nav, she picks a route and then that's it. So I was looking at the bigger picture on here, scrolling in, and I'm like, there's a ferry. I don't want to go across a ferry when you can just go through Fort William and down the way we want to go today. And she doesn't give you that option. So I just looked at the map and knew we were just going to go bypass where she wanted us to turn. But yeah, the first day blindly followed her directions up to Nairn out of Inverness, and it took us definitely on the backcountry roads. It took us forever. It was nice, it was pretty, but yeah, it would have been a lot faster to go on the main road. The smaller roads are definitely skinnier and windier and more taxing mentally as far as having to pay more attention to what you're doing. So more scenic, of course, but definitely a little bit more exhausting too. So this 10 days was an absolutely incredible adventure. We have a big huge loop of Scotland that we did. We could have easily spent weeks and months more just driving around and seeing a lot more sights. We love seeing the castles and the all the historic sites, and the natural beauty is one of the biggest reasons why we came here. So we'll be heading on to phase 2 of our trip and getting rid of the camping van tomorrow morning, and then phase 2 will be the West Highland Way, so we'll get more into the Highlands of Scotland and lots of good hiking adventures from here on out.